Okay, it is time for us to start. It is 5:32. It is 5:32 on the 4th of February 2021, and we are gathered in the boardroom on Legacy Campus. Thank you all for being here. We'll have roll call starting with Larry.
Larry Jepson, board member.
Randall Bagley, board member.
Steve Norton, superintendent.
Roger Pulsifer, board member.
Terry Rhodes, board member.
Kathy Christiansen, board member.
Chris Corcoran, board member.
Dale Hanson, business administrator.
And Jeff will be coming. Randall will give us our pledge and mission statement.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Thank you, Randall. We will have, for our board business, we are going to have Chris Corcoran sworn in as a new board member after his wonderful election in November. And Dale Hanson will perform that.
I normally have her score up front if you like.
Thank you, Dale and Chris. And next we have public input. No public input. Okay, moving on. We move to our consent agenda. And I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions on this one? Okay. We'll vote then.
All the votes are in and unanimously in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Dale. Next is our reports agenda, and we need to amend that because we need to add one item that didn't get put on the reports agenda. Blair Powell, Principal Blair Powell is here from Spring Creek Middle School to talk about amending their school land trust plan. Can I get a motion from someone to add that to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to add that.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, since that's not on the agenda, then Dale can't do it digitally, so we'll have to vote by acclamation, or by speaking, however you say that. All in
Yes.
favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, great. We'll add that to the reports agenda. And we'll hear you first. Principal Powell.
Is that working? Okay. Thank you for hearing me today. We have, as a school, originally we planned on spending money in our trust lands for a training, a professional development training that was going to take place in the spring of last year in April. It was canceled, well, it was postponed originally and now has subsequently been canceled. And so actually it was planned for the spring. We were going to pay for it, and then we were, going to be able to attend this year. Didn't happen. We would propose that we move the money that we were going to use towards that training to salary. That would be $3,000 from substitute teachers, which we're going to pay for substitute teachers for that day for training, employee training, and teacher travel, all to put into salary because we were going to use that to pay teachers for a training that is going to be virtual training that they're going to be able to do the first part of June, and it would pay for their hours spent out of contract time. So that's the first proposed change that we make, and the second proposed change that we make is we included money in a supply account that we didn't realize that needed to be into computer supply account because it was for iPads, an iPad lab that is going to be a shared lab. And so that would be moving $7,000 from the supply account to the computer supply account. So those are the two changes that we propose we made. Our board, our community council is meeting next Tuesday. They'll be able to vote on this as well. They have heard already about the change in the training, the professional development, but they have not heard about the iPad lab change. That'll be the only other change.
So are you still purchasing the iPads? You're just moving the money to the right designation?
Correct.
The right fund?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
yeah, just so we have it in the right area, because
it's important.
accounting purposes, right now.
Does anyone have any questions for Blair? All right, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Moving on, we will hear an elementary Acadience report from Gary Thomas.
Okay, thank you. We know, of course, we moved students last year in the month of March to all online. We had no choice in that. And we worried at that time, we put things together as quickly as we could, but we worried would the education that we provided be as robust?
Can you wait for a second? Nobody can hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Thanks.
With our move to online last spring in March, we worried about that being maybe as robust as our in-person learning. But our district did an amazing job, and our teachers did an amazing job of pivoting. That seems to be one of the key words nowadays. Within just a couple of days to moving everything to an online situation, and they did great with that. But not all of our kids were engaged, and not all of our students got the same maybe level of education. So we know that every summer there is a learning loss. There's a gap, a summer slide that we call it sometimes. And our fear was this year that summer slide would be even greater than previous years. We were not able to take our end of level test, our state test, and so we don't have that data. But one thing in the elementary that we do have is the Acadience data, which is our reading assessment, and we take that 3 times a year. So if you back up to last February, a year ago, we wrapped up our Acadience middle of year, and if you see MOU or MOY on any of these, that's middle of year. So if you take a look at the document that you have in front of you now, what we have is the percentage of students who were proficient last year, the 2019-2020 school year, in blue. by grade level, K through 3. And the reason we chose K through 3 is that's what's required from the state for us to do. Now, we go ahead and test for our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students also. But because this is the online, or the what's required at the state, we just went this far for this particular report. You can see a difference between last year's in blue and this year in red, our 2020, 2021. And this data is just as of last week. We finished up with our middle of year Acadience test. I've heard across the nation, maybe, and across the state, some numbers as far as maybe a 20% gap, a 20% loss between last year and this year. And my gut feeling told me that we would see a loss, but that ours would not be as great as maybe the rest of the nation. And that's evident right here, I think. If you look at our kindergarten, the difference from last year to this year is an 8% loss. In 1st grade, it's a 10% difference. In 2nd grade, an 8%, and in 3rd grade, a 3% difference, which I think is amazing, pretty commendable of our teachers and everything that they've tried to do for this last year. If you'll look at the next page, if Tim will pull that one up, what I wanted to show here was, this is the same information, except for we split it by just a little bit here. This is our middle of year, just wrapped up a week ago, on our composite scores for Acadians in kinder, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. But what I wanted to know was how much of a difference we saw between those students who were online and those students who were in person. Now, before I go any further, I do need to say a huge thank you to Kurt Jenkins and all of our teachers who have been teaching our online this year, because they have done an amazing job. And they have really put together, in the elementary, we did not have any kind of an online curriculum or an online school going. So for them to put it together over the summer and pull this off, as of Monday of this week, we had 401 students participating in this online elementary program. But you can see a difference in the level of proficiency between our in-person and our online. In kindergarten, in person, 68% of our kindergartners are proficient right now or on grade level, according to the Acadians. Our online, 58%. So a 10% difference there. 1st grade, you can see there's a 12% difference. 2nd grade, a 6% difference. And in 3rd grade, a 2% difference between those two. That's part of the story. I want you to go to one more page. Tim, if you'll pull up the next one. That was a proficiency. That's a snapshot in time. If you look at this one, this is measuring growth. Because we give this assessment 3 times a year, we have a fall Acadience composite score, and now we have a middle of year Acadience composite score. This is measuring students against themselves. This is their growth from fall to middle of year. And that's a moving target. That, of course, moves, and so we can measure typical growth. Because across the nation, we have all of these kids, and this isn't being compared against this year. This is what they normally see in a normal year. If you look at the difference, for example, in kindergarten, our in-person students showed 62% of them showed typical growth, while our online students, only 38% showed typical growth from fall till now. That's a difference of 24%. Our 1st grade, there's a difference of 18%. Our 2nd grade, a difference of 16%. And our 3rd grade, a difference of 22%. So there are a lot of variables with the online. I've tried to view some of those things. We've even tried to do our Tier 2 reading interventions online. Wow, that was very difficult. I watched a parapro try to teach that with a little brother who's playing over here. I watched her fiddle with her computer and back and forth and, all over. So there's a lot of variables that we have no control over, versus in an in-person situation, those small groups are run very efficiently and very effectively. And when we try to do that outside of that in an online situation, there are so many variables that we just have no control over. So that is our Acadience data as it shows right now, as of just finishing up this last week. As we prepare to move into next year, we're actually piloting 4 different math assessments right now that will give us this same kind of data for math. And as we look at closing the gap that we currently have, we're going to be very strategic with summer school programs and online programs, after-school programs that will target the students who are behind and specifically what they need, not only in English language arts, but also in our math. And so we'll have another assessment similar to this one. We're piloting the 4. We'll choose the best one that will give us the data that we need and help us formulate the curriculum and the path for those kids. So, any questions?
I have one question. Do you have very many students who were online at the beginning of the year, but now they're back in school?
Couple hundred.
So that probably affects the in-person scores a little bit, which means that really the kids who have been here for the whole year are doing better than what these scores reflect.
So what we did for this report that I'm sharing with you is we used November 15th as our cutoff date. If a student was online up to that point, we counted them on the online side of this. We figured they spent the majority of that time, September, October, half of November, and we left them in the online. So we used that as our cutoff date.
So you still ended up with some kids.
But there's still some, yeah, many. I ran the report on Monday. It had been run on the 28th of January, and there were 8 more students who had transferred from our online to our in-person just from that Friday to that Monday.
Well, the scores look great, I think. So congratulations to everybody online and in person. I think you've done a really super job on it.
Can I just make a quick comment? Because it's important to make sure that you use a lot of caution when you're interpreting these data because of the kind of study, I guess you'd say, that was done here. I mean, there was nothing controlled about this. This is entirely observational. So the people who chose to be online were kind of self-selected, and so I guess the reason I'm saying this is because you wouldn't want to use this to establish any kind of causality. Bob Mills in my department, his wife is Kim Mills, who teaches the 2nd grade online class, and he's actually shared videos with me of what she does. And
She's a rock star.
And so, I guess the reason I'm pointing, there are a couple of reasons why it's important to keep this in mind. One is that the kids who chose or whose families chose for them to be online could have been a whole lot worse off without the efforts of the teachers who had put so much time in, because they were self-selected. They may have characteristics that may have put them at a disadvantage to begin with, is what I'm saying. And so as you're sharing this with your teachers, the ones who are going the extra mile, to provide the online content, you wouldn't want to discourage them by giving them the context that maybe there was something about what they were doing that was lacking.
Absolutely.
That kind of makes sense. And so
Those teachers have worked as hard or harder than any of our other teachers, no question, and they've done an amazing job.
And Kathy's point is really important because there are students who are moving back and forth between these modalities, and so they provide kind of a natural experiment. It would be interesting to compare students who were online one year but then face-to-face the next, because then you're comparing them with themselves, and so that could give you some indication of, it would help you to parse out that causality piece just a little bit.
And we could do that. We could pull these students and see how they performed last year in an in-person, absolutely.
Right. My hunch is that online is not as good, especially based on what we're observing up at the university. But just to make sure that those teachers feel like they're not wasting their time or anything, I think it'd be useful to just kind of keep that in mind in terms of the interpretation. That yes, there are causes that might be ascribed to the online venue itself, but at the same time, there are explanations that may have to do just with the nature of the people who are selecting themselves to go online.
Well, and you
That's
have no
my
control over the environment that they're taking the test in, whereas you do in person.
So they actually came to the school to take this assessment.
Oh, okay.
If they chose not to come to the school, if they still felt, that was not because of being, immunocompromised or something like that, We actually had them come to the district office. We did it there. We did some of them in cars. There was a handful who did not want to get out of the car and come in, and so we actually, but it
Wow.
was the same set of testers
Very
that,
accommodating.
that tested all students. We have a group of about 18 Acadians testers who have been trained, and they tested all students, over 9,000 of them.
But even with, to Jeff's point, with the environment of the test, there's no way we can control the environment of the learning.
Right.
The learning environment at home. And there's no way the online teachers can control that through the computer.
Right.
And so I'm impressed that the scores for online are as high as they are. With as young of students as they're working with online and so easily distracted.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I'll just say I'm living proof tonight that in-person instruction is much better than online because Tim helped me in 5 minutes accomplish what I have not been able to do in a week. So, just a little testimonial.
Gary, thanks for your work on this. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll hear the first report on the 2021-2022 school fees from Mike.
There we go. It's always nice when you don't have a bunch of people in the boardroom when you're talking about school fees. We have gone through the process with the secondary principals and discussed them both at the middle school level and also at the high school secondary level. And here are the proposals that we have, and probably the reason why there's not many people out here is, I think they're very limited in what they were asking for. And I'll walk through this with you quick. On the first page in section C, this is a middle school request, and it's when the students are in a career and technical education class. Of course, that's a fee waiverable class, but the supply costs can continue to go up and up because it's a hands-on class. And they're asking that fee be raised to 15 rather than 10 because of the cost of supplies for them. That's the only thing in middle school. If we go over to the second page, and I'm in section D, up on the top, ceramics 3, I highlighted in red, was in the top line, the line just above that previously. And they asked to move that down to this line because they see this more of a type of an AP type course because of the projects and the requirements of the course. So we've always had this fee there, but it was 25. We've moved it down to this other line, which would be 40. Simply because of the nature of the course now. The next one is one that just recently added, Career and Technical Education Industry Tests and Certification. We receive money from the state. We have for the last 3 or 4 years. If a student takes one of our career and technical ed courses and they want to get an industry test or certificate, we've been able to have that money to pay that industry test for them. And some examples of that would be the Microsoft Office systems where they could get the certificate in Word, Excel, Access, or PowerPoint. And a new one that's coming out is the Microsoft Cloud Computing. Or I know I said that wrong. It's just cloud computing. And they'll have industry certificates when they finish the last course in that, and they're able to sit and then take the industry test. Governor Herbert last year said we have in the state of Utah over 40,000 jobs waiting for computer cloud types endorsements, people who are trained in that area. And his goal was to close that gap in 5 years. So this is a new course the state has come up with to try to work towards that goal. It is a waivable fee. Right now, if you were to look on the industry test site, you'd see that as a $50 fee. So I put in here as published, but it's waivable. CTE has enough funds that if we're not able to receive funds from the state on these industry tests, we can still use CTE funds to waive it. That they've gone all the way through these courses and they want to sit to take this industry exam. And we've been doing this for quite a few years and been very successful in students earning these types of industry certificates. The next one is the elective PE and weight training. We try not to hold or charge any fees for required classes. This class here, the elective PE and weight training, some students, if you'd let them, would take PE all year long. But there's so much state requirement, and that is free to any student. What the principals are asking, the elective PE and weight training, they always use the weight room, and they're trying to come up with some funds to help repair and maintain the weight room, which we have very elaborate, nice weight rooms in our district. And so the purpose of this $5 is to start to let them create a fund that they can replace this cable, replace that piece of equipment, replace that bearing, those types of things. That was the reason for that class. If you go down to section E, I didn't highlight it in red, but about a month ago, those two DLI examinations and optional practice, I had actually listed the price there on this paper that you see before you. That's what it cost this year. What I should have put there is as published. And so when I bring it back to the board, instead of saying $94 or $29, it'll say as published. Because sometimes it'll go down, sometimes it'll go up on that fee. The next one is the summer or evening core remediation. And I know I missed that on the middle school. That was down there on non-waivable fees on the first page. The online re-enrollment, Kurt Jenkins is asking for this. Anytime any of our students register for an online class, there is no fee. But Kurt says what the problem is coming up, and other districts are doing the same thing. If they have to re-enroll and retake that class, that there's a fee, because now we're paying again for that teacher, for that instruction, and he's just saying second go around, there should be a fee. That's the explanation behind that one. And that usually happens during the summer if a student's going to retake an online type class because of they failed it during the year or something. But what I did bring up with Kurt is I'd hate for it to be just a blanket decision, because maybe there was a circumstance that happened during the year why, if a student had to withdraw because of, there can be all kinds of situations. But to look at that and just not make that a blanket call on that particular fee. And the last one on section G, they would like to take close-up the $2,000 fee totally off the schedule. They say they are keeping this totally out of the schools. A third party is running that now. It's all advertised outside the school day. They say if somebody chose to waive that, they couldn't afford it. And they are distancing themselves from it. It's not that they're going to stop doing it, but they don't want it to be a published fee that we would be held accountable for. So questions?
Is that the principals who don't want the fee?
Yeah.
On the CTE Industry Tests that is added there, are they, so you mentioned $50 for a test, are they all the same price or are they different?
No, they'll vary, and that's why I put as published there. Just when I had a meeting this week on the cloud computing, they mentioned in that meeting the cloud computing industry exam would be $50. Now the MOS tests, the Microsoft Office, they're usually about $20 each. So it really varies on what the course is.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? we put her name on there?
Yeah. Okay, so we have the copies of our strategic plan now. And in thinking about where do we go next with this, I thought it might be a good idea if we got some of these copied, and then we, as board members, take them to the school community councils, give them to the teachers and the parents and the administrators there. Do you like that idea?
Sure.
Okay, there's been a lot of time and effort put into preparing this, and for it just to sit still and not get out to the people in our district, I think would be a disservice to all of those who worked so hard on it. So I've got a box here of them, and I'm kind of thinking, would you say like 10 per school would cover your school community councils except for the high schools?
Yeah, we need a few more. Usually Ridgeline has more.
More than 20?
So is Skyview.
So we might need more copies.
We can get more copies.
All right, so.
But there are some elementaries that have very few people in their school community council.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is just let each of you count out what you want after the board meeting's over. Is that okay?
Sure.
And then you can take them. And then the other thing I was wondering about, Superintendent, is can we have this kind of presented to the elementary and the secondary principals so they know what it is before we get it out to them?
Sure.
Okay.
That'll take place this next week.
Okay. Any other ideas on how to distribute this so it does get out?
That's a good idea.
Put it in Maverick stores.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else want to give a board committee report? Board member report? Okay, great. I have two things I'd like to discuss. Last time we talked briefly about National School Board Association conference in April because that the early bird registration deadline is February 26th. So I'd just like to know who is interested in going. It says, as I studied the online information, it says that they have, what did they call it? They have changed it from calling it a conference to an online experience. Transformed the conference to an online experience. They're offering, it says, let me find the number again, sorry. 64 concurrent sessions on the online experience, plus general session keynotes, special council events, and networking opportunities. The educational sessions will take place from 12:30 to 5:30 p.m., April 8th and 9th, and noon to 4:10 p.m. on April 10th. If you cannot make the scheduled time of the session, the content will be available on demand for 90 days following the event for all registered participants. So this online experience is $675 per person for early registration or $3,600 for 9 team members. So I want to know what you think about that. Would any of you access that? Are any of you interested in registering for that?
I'm not.
I don't think I am.
Okay.
I don't think so.
The cost seems really high to me.
That's what I think.
For what they're offering. I mean,
The general sessions are not available for that 90 days, so if you have a keynote speaker that you were interested in, you have to listen to that at the time.
yeah,
I would actually prefer that we come up with our own topics that we would like to be enlightened on and do that at our June
Well, also USBA is offering this year a professional development for board members free each month. And they would love to hear your topics that you would like to have somebody do training on.
Okay.
And those are 1 hour long and are planned to be 1 hour long, and they don't cost us anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, Terry, the cost seems excessive to me for, I mean, anyway.
Oh, that's good to hear, because I heard from my husband this morning about how important it is to spend money on these kinds of things, and how they just hosted one, and how successful it was.
Okay. I don't want to be at odds
So
with your
thank you, Jeff.
husband, but-
I'll take that ammunition home
Okay.
and say, Jeff said.
Well, I don't know, maybe I'm alone here, but that's kind of my feeling.
Well, yeah, I think it's hard for me after just having gone through the USBA online conference, which seemed pretty simple, and I was pleasantly surprised with how worthwhile it was to me for no cost. And, you know, it was only 3 sessions, right? But still, it was useful, and that was about as long as I could stand to sit in the seat.
Is there any reason why the registration cost would be a benefit to somebody? I mean, does the USBA return any of the revenue from this conference to, you know, for any purpose that might benefit schools or students or anything like that?
It's used for,
Is it all administrative costs?
no, it's not all administrative. Well, if you call lobbyists administrative, then yes, it's partly for lobbyist costs.
So the entire thing supports the USBA?
Yeah.
NSBA, yeah.
NSBA. It's a large organization, and I'm sure they're hurting for cash. I don't question that. I'm sure they would have liked to have had a smaller fee, but they probably bet that there'd be a number of people who would come on at that fee, because it's a revenue maker for the NSBA.
And
But-
actually, that fee's quite a bit less than if we went in person. So
Oh, yeah.
if you compare the two, it's like, well, that's a little
Yeah.
more reasonable,
Yeah.
but still.
But you don't get the experience
Yeah.
of being together, camaraderie, all that stuff that comes, that are the side benefit of going to a conference. So I'm fine if we just sit it out for a year.
Any other thoughts? Dale?
Won't break my heart.
Okay, thanks for letting me know that you answered what I thought you would say. Okay, well, we will not plan to go or to pay for that experience unless somebody has some real drive and desire to do that. The other thing I wanted to ask was about the remote board meeting that we had where Chris and I went to White Pine. We've had requests from schools in the south that we do that in the south. Is there, so I'm just curious to have a discussion about timeline to do that, what school we should choose next. Larry, Roger, Jeff,
Yeah,
what thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I'm game, I think it sounds good. As far as when we do it, is next month too soon?
I don't know, Tim, is next month too soon?
Tim.
Yeah.
Is March 4th too soon to do another remote board meeting?
Is that an inconvenience for your tech crew, or is it fine? Okay.
Okay. Well, let's plan for the 4th of March, or, yeah, the 4th of March. Is there a particular school, any of you who represent the South
How about Ridgeline?
Ridgeline? Okay. Any other thoughts?
It's fine.
Okay. Ridgeline it is.
So then we just
So
need
who
to
would
have
you
a.
want there?
Yeah.
Whichever two of you want to attend there.
You better let Roger, he won't have to drive as far.
Roger and Jeff?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
So you send out, how did you do it, Terry? You send out letters to,
I sent
Certain
a
people.
blanket email to parents, a list of parents that the principal gave me. To do it again, I think I would not do a group email, I would do individual emails, so they feel more, responsible to be there. But also Shelley Healy at White Pine was gonna write up some notes, having done it now, and it was different than she expected. She would have prepared for it differently. So, I'll ask her to share her notes with Brittany Foster at Ridgeline and with us, so that we know how we can do better at that. And then, should we use the same list of questions?
I thought it was a good list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, unless somebody has some additions, but I think they agree.
Okay. And we just, I just invited the list probably had 12 parents on it. And then, the principal sent out a notice to all the parents that it was happening, so if anyone wanted to stop by, they could. But I wanted to invite some specific parents so that we would actually have some show up. And there were also 2 teachers that I hadn't asked, but they stayed because I wanted to. So that was how that all worked out. I'll contact Brittany and ask her, if that's okay with her, if that'll work. And then move forward with that on the 4th of March.
Okay.
All right,
Terry,
and I'll
I-
report about it at our next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I don't know if this is possible, but it occurred to me, when we were at White Pine and when Gary was talking, it kind of reinforced this, I guess, encourage interest in a meeting like this. I wonder if it would be interesting to talk about something that's specific to that school or that area.
Okay.
And student performance, might be one of those things that parents are really interested in. In other words, just a little positive story that you can tell about the school that you're at that shows parents how, things are getting done, basically. And of course, with everything that's happened over the past year, that might be one thing that parents are interested in, so that they don't spend as much time wringing their hands or feeling a lot of anxiety about, how disadvantaged their kids are or something like that. I mean, to talk about just something like that, but focus on school-specific data or something like that might just provide them a little snapshot
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim,
Pick
let's
a
not do
super
that.
controversial topic for Ridgeline,
Yeah.
and then
Thanks,
just
Tim.
hand the mic
That's
around. No, but you know what I mean, something that would be interesting to them, that would be specific to the school, but might be something positive, a little nugget for parents that show up, and something that you could use in advance to advertise the meeting that might pique their interest.
Okay.
Good idea.
All right, so we'll move to the superintendent's report.
I'm hoping y'all clicked on the Cache County School District Teachers of the Year thing. I think that's the nicest display we've ever had to highlight our teachers and classified employees. I don't know everybody that's been responsible, but I think Blake Pulsifer was the one who laid it out. And if you get him to do something, it's going to be absolutely plumb and square and everything right on, and such a nice job. It's located in our new district office, down in a hallway off of our classrooms, where I think the majority of teachers and classified people will at some point see it during a normal year. But it's really, really, really nice, and so I thought you ought to make sure you took a look at that. And then my part tonight was, Terry asked if I wouldn't have a short discussion on House Bill 357, and I just given you the very first page. If you want more than the first page, then I'm asking you to contact Dale. And Dale will happy to sit down for the rest of his career here at the district and try to explain to you the rest of House Bill 357. It's tied to Amendment G. If you remember, Amendment G passed, didn't pass by a large majority of the people, but it amended the Constitution in the state of Utah to say that income tax could be spent not only on public ed, higher ed, but on children and people with disabilities. So we have not seen any money transferred from the fund this year from income tax to cover either one of those areas that are new. But I just want to remind you that in '96, when they passed the amendment that let money go to colleges and universities, up through the last time I calculated, $7.8 billion went from public ed into higher ed. I had no comment other than that's money that could have been in public school system. I think the people who originally passed that bill back in coming out of the Depression probably would have felt very comfortable about spending money on educating kids through college, because the college degree is about what a high school degree used to be when they were talking about that. So I'm sure it was a wise use of money, and it's awful hard and difficult to talk about not spending money on people with disabilities and also children. And so we'll see as things go on what kind of money might be transferred into those areas. The other part of that was the state said if they could get education support for that amendment, which all major organizations and that have to do with education in the state did support the passage of that amendment, they would pass House Bill 357. And House Bill 357 was their way of saying, we know education doesn't get enough funding. If you'll support Amendment G, we'll go down the road with you and do the following things. This bill defines the terms, amends the allowable purposes for the capital local levy in certain circumstances. On a year when the economy goes down and the money that might have been budgeted for schools is not available, it does give permission for school districts to use capital money, which is the money we use to take care of our buildings, could be moved over in to cover expenses incurred in the basic budget. I don't think, we've never gone down that road. That provision has been available in other years, and we've never done that. I think it would be wise to remember that we don't have enough money in either fund, and to take some out of one fund and put it in another fund is probably not a wise thing to do. And provides for the minimum school program to be funded from the Uniform School Fund. There's been a Uniform School Fund which income tax money should have been going into the whole time that they've collected income tax. They have not used that fund for a number of years, and And now they have promised that they will put the money into that fund, and then it cannot be used for anything else. So then it provides for ongoing funding, including additional amount for enrollment growth and inflation for the minimum school program. For the years I've been here, there was numerous legislators, when we would talk about funding enrollment growth, their eyes would roll and they say, you know, nobody else in the whole budget gets an automatic increase in funding just because. And I would always say, it isn't just because, it's because we got more kids. And we're giving that service to more kids. That now has got to the point where they've agreed that it makes sense to fund increased enrollment, because if you don't do that, then the value of the WPU automatically goes down. So they've agreed that that's part of the base budget. Now, when they start talking base budget, you need to understand that before Governor Walker, they didn't pass a budget until the end of the session. And when Governor Walker was in there, she wanted money for the K-3 reading program, 1 to K-3. And it got to the end of the session and she wasn't going to get it. And she said, if I don't get it, then you will not have I will veto your budget, and you will not have a budget to run the state. As soon as the legislators realized that that really is how it was going to be, she got her education money, reading money funded. But the next year, the legislature decided they'd never get in that situation ever again with the governor having that kind of power, so they pass a budget at the beginning of the year now, and that will be...
Beginning of the session?
Beginning of the session, excuse me. At the beginning of the session, and that's the budget if they don't get to the point of getting to another budget at the end. And that budget is just a mirror of the budget from the year before. So just them agreeing that they would put in that new base budget at the beginning of the session, enrollment growth, and inflation, that's a win for us. That's a nice win for us. It's the first time that that's ever happened. And then the next one is providing for the funding of restricted funds to a stabilized education fund. They think and realize that it's really, really, really detrimental to school districts if they have to pull back money once the school year started. And that just makes sense because we basically have 85% of our general budget goes for salaries and benefits. So once you start the school year, all those people are already hired. So they've agreed now on a good year, when things are really good, they are going to take money and put it into the uniform school fund so that it can't be brought out and spent on anything else, and that will become the new rainy day fund for education. And that's a good thing too.
So what you're saying is had that been in place in, like, say 2008, 9, then say things like furloughs would have been avoided.
Yep. Now, our school district figured out a way not to have to let people go, but we all took a 4.1% decrease in salary, but other districts did let people go. So well, you won't know. It'd be nice to, if anybody's going to be around 25 years from now, to come back and listen to a discussion that will be held in a boardroom somewhere in this valley and find out some superintendent's going to tell you that, boy, that was a really great deal we made in 2000, and it was a wise decision. Or somebody will be saying, like I said, there was $7.8 billion that could have gone to public ed that went somewhere else.
That'll just be Roger. He'll be the only one who's around.
And you're on a fixed income?
Yeah. All right. Any questions, because you have them? Dale will certainly answer them for you.
I have a question on the bonus. Where's that at right now for the?
Okay, the bonus, they are trying to get that out as early as the 1st of March. They did rewrite the bill to include school-level administrators, and then they also had the term directors. Well, I don't think we have any directors at the school level. But I don't know how many of you saw, we had some correspondence from our classified people.
I saw that.
And they've left some classified people out, technology people, school, no, it wasn't school lunch, it
Why
was.
would they leave technology people of all the people this year? Man.
But anyway, I would say the same thing. If there's classified people that are left out, we will come up with the resources to cover our classified people, if that's okay with you guys.
I think we should.
I do too.
I do too.
So, that's it.
All right, anybody else have anything you want to add?
Just remember to come and grab your copies of the strategic plan to get to the schools, community councils. If you're in a situation where you can't make it to the student count, the school community council, thank you. Maybe you could just drop them off to the principal and get a little explanation, whatever, works out for everybody, but I think it's good to get it out.
All right, thank you all for coming, like we have extra people this time. Thank you for coming.
And staying to the
Principal,
end.
wow.
That's awesome.
And staying to the end. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.